Are what he's learned so far on the ground.
Tell me when everybody's all lined up. Come on, we got another member of Congress here. Well, to begin with, I just want to say thank you to the outstanding officials behind me who have been on the ground working 24/7 since this flood happened. It begins with outstanding leadership from the top with Governor John Bel Edwards, and we very much appreciate all the outstanding work he's done. His better half, the First Lady of Louisiana, I know has been by his side every step of the way, and we are grateful for her. I know they've got their own cleaning up to do because the governor's mansion was flooded as well. In addition, I want to acknowledge Senator Bill Cassidy, Senator David Vitter, Representative Garrett Graves, Representative Cedric Richmond, the mayor of Baton Rouge, Kip Holden, and somebody who I can't brag enough about, one of the best hires I made as president, the administrator of FEMA, Craig Fugate, who has done such an outstanding job, not just in dealing with this particular incident, but has really rebuilt FEMA so that there's a change of culture. And everybody knows that when a disaster happens, FEMA's going to be there on the ground cooperating with state and local officials rapidly and with attention to detail and keeping the families who've been affected uppermost in their minds. So we very much appreciate everything Craig's done. It's hard, by the way, for Craig to be here because he's a Florida Gator, and he's been seeing a lot of LSU T-shirts as we've been passing by. I just had a chance to see some of the damage from the historic floods here in Louisiana. I come here first and foremost to say that the prayers of the entire nation are with everybody who lost loved ones. We are heartbroken by the loss of life. There are also people who are still desperately trying to track down friends and family. We're going to keep on helping them every way that we can. As I think anybody who can see just the streets, much less the inside of the homes here, people's lives have been upended by this flood. Local businesses have suffered some terrible damage. Families have, in some cases, lost homes. They've certainly lost possessions, priceless keepsakes. I was just speaking to a young woman whose husband died shortly after the birth of her second child, and she's talking about how her daughter was trying to gather all the keepsakes that she had in her bedroom that reminded her of her father. And that gives you some sense that this is not just about property damage. This is about people's roots. You also have a situation where there are a lot of kids who are supposed to start a new school year, and they're going to need some special help and support for a while. Sometimes when these kinds of things happen, it can seem a little bit too much to bear, but what I want the people of Louisiana to know is that you're not alone on this. Even after the TV cameras leave, the whole country is going to continue to support you and help you until we get folks back in their homes and lives are rebuilt. And the reason I can say that with confidence is because that's what Americans do in times like this. I saw it when I visited displaced Louisianans when I came down here as a senator after Katrina. I saw it when I visited New Orleans for the 10th anniversary last year. I know how resilient the people of Louisiana are, and I know that you will rebuild again. And what I've seen today proves it. I want to thank all the first responders, the National Guard, all the good neighbors who were in a boat going around and making sure people were safe, showing extraordinary heroism and in some cases risking their own lives. Governor Edwards, the state of Louisiana, the city, the parish governments, they've all stepped up under incredibly difficult circumstances. I just want to thank the people on this block. As I was walking down, one woman at the end, elderly, she was on her own. She had just lost her daughter. You had a young man next door who was helping out his father, but had also offered to help out that neighbor so that she could salvage as much as she could and start the process of rebuilding. With respect to the federal response, over a week ago, I directed the federal government to mobilize and do everything we could to help. FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate arrived here a week ago to help lead that effort. Secretary of Homeland Security Jay Johnson visited last week to make sure state and local officials are getting what they need. To give you a sense of the magnitude of the situation here, more than 100,000 people have applied for federal assistance so far. As of today, federal support has reached $127 million. That's for help like temporary rental assistance, essential home repairs, and flood insurance payments. FEMA is also working with Louisiana around the clock to help people who are displaced by floods find temporary housing. And any Louisiana family that needs help, you can find your nearest disaster recovery center by visiting FEMA.gov or calling 1-800-621-FEMA. I'm going to repeat that, FEMA.gov or 1-800-621-FEMA. Now, federal assistance alone is not going to be enough to make people's lives whole again. So I'm asking every American to do what you can to help get families and local businesses back on their feet. If you want help, Governor Edwards put together some ways to start at volunteerlouisiana.gov. That's volunteerlouisiana.gov. And the reason this is important is because even though federal money is moving out, volunteer help actually helps the state because it can offset some of its costs. Obviously, private donations are going to be extremely important as well. We want to thank the Red Cross for everything they're doing, but there are a lot of private philanthropic organizations, churches, parishes around the state and around the country who want to help as well. And that's how we're going to make sure that everybody is able to get back on their feet. So let me just remind folks, sometimes once the floodwaters pass, people's attention spans pass. This is not a one-off. This is not a photo op issue. This is how do you make sure that a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, people still are getting the help that they need. I need all Americans to stay focused on this. If you're watching this today, make sure that you find out how you can help. You can go to volunteerslouisiana.gov, or you can go to FEMA.gov. We'll tell you, we'll direct you. You can go to whitehouse.gov, and we'll direct you how you can help. All right? But we're going to need to stay on this because these are some good people down here. We're glad that the families I had a chance to meet are safe, but they got a lot of work to do, and they shouldn't have to do it alone. All right? Thank you very much, everybody. God bless.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
President Obama in Zachary, Louisiana, which is just about...
We discussed that on the way here. What you have is, the Stafford Act provides a certain match. A lot of the homes have flood insurance, but a lot of homes don't. And what Craig Fugate is doing, what I instructed him to do from the start is let's get money out as fast as we can because we know that there's going to be a certain amount of assistance that's going to be forthcoming. So there's no point in waiting. We kind of make initial estimates and we start pushing stuff out. That helps us and helps the governor and all these officials here do their jobs. And then what we have to do is, as we fine-tune exactly what's needed, when we know, for example, how much permanent housing is going to have to be built, when we have a better sense of how much infrastructure has been damaged, what more we need to do in terms of mitigation strategies, that's when Congress, I think, may be called upon to do some more. Now, the good news is that you got 4 members of Congress right here, and a number of them happen to be in the majority. So I suspect that they may be able to talk to the Speaker and talk to Mitch McConnell but in part because of the fine stewardship at FEMA, and frankly, because we've been a little lucky so far, and I'm going to knock on some wood in terms of the amount of money that's gone out this year, FEMA has enough money for now to cover the costs that can be absorbed. The issue is going to be less what we need to do in terms of paying for the short term. It's going to be the medium term and the long term rebuilding. Congress should be back in session right after Labor Day. By that time, we'll probably have a better assessment. And in the meantime, lawyers at FEMA will be examining what statutory flexibility we've got. And I know the governor's been right on top of making sure that Louisiana gets everything that it can get in order to help rebuild.
Mr. President, do you worry about that fight becoming politicized and your trip here becoming politicized?
No, I don't. First of all, one of the benefits of being 5 months short of leaving here is I don't worry too much about politics. The second thing I have seen historically is that, when disasters strike, that's probably one of the few times where Washington tends not to get political. I guarantee you, nobody on this block, none of those first responders, nobody gives a hoot whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. What they care about is making sure they're getting the drywall out and the carpet out, and there's not any mold building. They get some contractors in here and they start rebuilding as quick as possible. That's what they care about. That's what I care about. So, we want to make sure that we do it right. We want to make sure that we do it systematically. But the one thing I just want to repeat is how proud I am of FEMA, because if you think about the number of significant natural disasters that have occurred since my presidency began, you'd be hard-pressed to find a local official anywhere in the country, including those in the other party, who wouldn't say that Craig Fugate and his team have been anything less than exemplary and professional. And one of the things I did when I walked through each of these homes was ask, have you contacted FEMA? Have you filed? And uniformly they said that they had been in touch with FEMA. They had acted professionally. Some of them had already been out here for inspections. And I think that does indicate why it's important for us to take the federal government seriously, federal workers seriously. There's a tendency sometimes for us to bash them and to think that they're these faceless bureaucrats. But when you get into trouble, you want somebody who knows what they're doing, who's on the ground, working with outstanding officials, and that's true whatever party. And I could not be prouder of the work that FEMA's done. That doesn't mean that there aren't going to still be folks who need more help and that we're not going to have some constraints statutorily and Congress isn't going to have to step up. But it does mean that the basic backbone, the basic infrastructure and architecture that we have in terms of disaster response, I think has been high quality. And I'm very proud of them for that. And I want to publicly acknowledge that at the moment. All right? Thank you, guys. How you doing? I'm a little sweaty.
Something of an impromptu press conference just started up there as the president continues to greet some of the local folks in Zachary, Louisiana. As you could tell, wiping the sweat from his face, it's a blistering hot day, which, of course, only makes the cleanup that much tougher. Hang on, another.
We got to have the podium so that, here, you get on one side, you get on the other. That way,
just a photo op.
We're doing a press conference together.
But we still have a live mic. The president's just taking photos with Pete Souza, his official White House photographer, who's along for the trip, as he is so often. Again, this is the president just talking to some of the folks affected. We're in Zachary, Louisiana there, almost due north of Baton Rouge. And before we bring in our guests, just to repeat some of the facts, the places that got the worst of the sustained rains in mid-August as this evil, violent, low-pressure system just parked itself over parts of Louisiana, got 30 inches plus. That was sustained rain. At its height, the area covered in water was roughly equal to the area of the state of New Jersey, where it takes, of course, many hours to drive from end to end, if that gives you any perspective on the size of the area of damage. Roughly 20 counties, or parishes as they're known in Louisiana, are considered among the hardest hit. And estimates are hard to come by for damage, but one of the more believable estimates has it that 60,000 homes have been damaged or destroyed. Just an incredible number. And a lot of folks have been saying that, you know, the money pipeline will open up. People need things as basic as ice and fresh water and food and shelter for the night. But they're going to need help in mucking out, as it's sometimes affectionately called locally, getting the muck, the mud, their belongings out of their homes, beginning the process of going through what's left. We have two folks waiting to talk to us from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Peter Kovacs is editor of the Advocate newspaper and, importantly, was editor of the TP, the Times-Picayune in New Orleans, during Hurricane Katrina. And there next to him, Lieutenant General Russell Honore, U.S. Army retired, who came to national prominence as head of Joint Task Force Katrina. We all remember and have dark memories of that time. General, starting with you, I love listening to you affectionately talk about the Cajun Navy and how they came to play these past few days and weeks, the spirit of voluntarism, the sense of family in Louisiana. What to the affected, since your area is emergency preparedness and emergency response, what do you think the folks in that area need most?
Well, we need prayers for some dry weather. We're still facing afternoon thunderstorms and continue to work through that because the drying process in the homes, Brian, once you muck them out, use that word, it could take a week or 2 weeks to try and dry the studs out if you only had a 3 or 4 foot flood. We have some new chemicals now that technology continue to improve that will reduce the amount of drying time, but we need dry weather so people can put the drywall back in, get the tape in, and sort of camp out in their homes, because we do not have enough hotels or available apartments for people to move in. Right now, people are trying to camp out in their homes once they've dried them out. And we need, in a way, we don't have any options other than to have them in their homes. And it's a miserable time with the heat and getting the electricity turned back on. And as you can have adequately described, it's miserable out there working. And some of them have gone back to work now, and they come back in the evening and they're working on the evening job, trying to work themselves back into their homes. So my heart go out to them. We need all the volunteers we can get. And as stated by the president, there will be some gaps between what the federal government offer them in assistance and what they will need to replace their furniture, their refrigerators, their televisions. And I hope the president, as he and his staff look at this, that they get a little more generous with the Stafford Act, because right now they follow some very strict rules that are leaving a lot of people out of this federal assistance because of income and how much money people make.
And General, we urge the folks watching at home to just stop and look around them and think of the environment where they're watching. Think of the drywall that surrounds them, the studs behind that. Perhaps think of the hardwood flooring, the carpets, the rugs beneath them. And now think of all of that with standing water for several days, blistering heat. General, the minimal response always used to be cut the drywall just above the water line, spray with a solution, 20% Clorox, 80% water, hope for good drying weather, as you said, and really hope for the best.
Yes, so the good news is we have some chemicals now. What we found out with the bleach in the water, too much of the water retained. So technology has changed that, thank God, so you don't have as much drying time. But Brian, a number I would like for us to collectively work on, we have at least 146,000 homes that were flooded. And somehow there's a number of 60,000 floating out there. And I hope between now and the evening news, collectively, between the media and the state, they can correct that number, because the difference between 60,000 and 146,000 is key to the amount of support we will get from the American people. This is a substantial flooding event. For instance, New Jersey during Sandy had about 300,000 homes, and we are already at about 146,000, Brian.
General, we'll work at revising up that number of 146,000. Thank you, sir. To Peter Kovacs. Peter, you heard one question from the press corps about politicizing this response. This visit has already been politicized. Donald Trump visited Louisiana before the president. It's been pointed out locally that you need infrastructure to support a presidential visit. He flew down on a smaller airplane. The 757 serves as Air Force One today. They tried to keep the traveling package of security smaller. Still, it's a major undertaking. But as you have always pointed out, it means a lot to folks to see their president.
Yes, I think it does, and I don't think that stops with the president. I think it meant a lot to folks to see Donald Trump. I think the leadership of Congress, the Republican leadership of Congress, should come. One thing, and I met the general during Katrina, and I think one thing we both learned from Katrina is that a picture is not worth 1,000 words, because whatever you see on television doesn't convey the magnitude of it. Hundreds, more than 100,000 homes flooded. If this occurred in New Jersey, it homes than in all. And you don't appreciate that unless you see it. And in Hurricane Katrina, there were a lot of public officials, maybe 100 members of Congress. Pelosi and Hastert both came down, and they didn't get along, and they led a bipartisan delegation. So we really believe that having people see this on the ground is the most important thing. And, the disruption lasts an afternoon, but the benefits last for the whole recovery, which could be a year to 5 years.
And Peter, you tell a story, and so does the historian and author Michael Beschloss, that dates back to a visit to Louisiana by President Lyndon Johnson, but tells of the power of the traveling presidency.
Well, during Betsy, which was a different time, Russell Long called up Lyndon Johnson and begged him to come to Louisiana, and Lyndon Johnson. The phone call is enshrined on the website of the Johnson Library, and Lyndon Johnson says, well, I'm kind of busy, but I'll send my best man. And Russell Long says, well, I'm not the least bit interested in your best man. And this occurred at 1:30 in the afternoon, and by evening, Lyndon Johnson was on the ground in New Orleans, and he went into a shelter in the 9th Ward, and of course it was dark and it was hot, as it always is in storm season in Louisiana, and he walked into that shelter and he shined a flashlight in his face and he said, my name is Lyndon Baines Johnson and I'm your president and I'm here to make sure you get all the help you need. And, they don't make presidents like that anymore. We're glad to see President Obama here. We're glad to see other leaders here, but we need that kind of spontaneous compassion.
And do you think people will be satisfied with the president's visit there today and the attention like this coverage is getting right now?
I think people will be satisfied. We were pleased to see that the president realizes that this is going to take an extraordinary act, a congressional act, to make people whole. That was what occurred in Katrina and Rita. It's what occurred in Sandy. There are two priorities in that. One is that there are homeowners who need to be made whole, and if I'm going to rebuild my home on my street, and I wasn't flooded, but if I'm a homeowner who was flooded and I'm going to rebuild a home, and I have flood insurance, I need to know that the guy next door who doesn't have flood insurance is also going to rebuild his home. Otherwise, I'm going to have a blighted neighborhood, and New Orleans has had that problem. And the second thing we need is, some attention to flood control, because as one of the things General Honore told me in Katrina is if businesses don't have confidence that a place can be rebuilt and that it's safe, and if businesses can't get flood insurance for their contents from private insurers, you're not going to have a recovery.
I want to thank both of these publicly minded gentlemen for joining us today, veteran journalist and editor Peter Kovacs, and 40-year-plus veteran of public service, U.S. Army Lieutenant General retired Russell Honore. Gentlemen, thank you very much. From Katrina to the BP spill to the flooding we've been covering, sometimes, and today is one of those times, it just feels like the state of Louisiana has taken all any state should be asked to take. We'll take a break here in our live special coverage. Thomas Roberts will pick up on the other side.